Welcome back. As always, be sure to leave a comment. Tell me how I can improve myself. I'm always looking for improvement, and your comment helps out a ton. Also, be sure to check out my other channel, YC Games. Me and my friends have fun playing video games. Lots of fun over there. You should go check it out. Also, be sure to leave a comment telling me how I should do my Borderlands 2 in VR gameplay walkthrough, because I do plan on walking through that, but I want it to be what you guys want to see. I don't know, do you guys just want me to show the main story? You want me to show side quests? Anything in particular? Any like Easter eggs or side things you want me to do? Make sure to leave in the comments. I'll be sure to include it when I, obviously when that game comes out and I start playing that. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. So I've already made quite a few videos talking about when I think Borderlands 3 will launch. That's not what this video is. This is when it should launch for multiple different reasons. Obviously, as the video goes on, I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. But so if you expect to have a concrete, alright, early 2019, it's got to be out. That's not what this video is. I'm going to try to avoid rumors as much as I can. This is just strictly going from like business, looking at it from a business perspective, and like what the fans are feeling and thinking. This is when the game should come out, not when I think it will. This is when it would make the most sense for the game to come out. So yeah, let's just get right into it. I talked about in my last Borderlands video, when I talked about why you should be excited for Borderlands 2 VR, that I do believe that the release of Borderlands 3 will be somewhat related to Borderlands 2 in VR. So I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on that in this video if you haven't seen that video. The release of Borderlands 2 in VR, when they pick the release, kind of, it feels like it's on purpose. Not only they want to get out before the holiday season, obviously, because it's a big spending season, so it's a big boost, get more money in the pockets, but also it's a good way to get Borderlands back in the minds of the average person. Now, obviously, VR is still new, it's not exactly common yet, but just having another big game launch like that, it's enough to get even casual people, it'll get it back in their minds. So it's important to announce Borderlands 3 relatively soon after. Obviously, let Borderlands 2 in VR launch, let it have its little cycle, let it, live for a little bit, let people get through it. But then before it is actually out of people's minds, it's important, it would make a lot of sense for them to at least announce Borderlands 3. So again, this isn't going to be a video where I'm going to say, alright, so it should be released sometime around there. No. It would just make a lot of sense for them to announce it, or at least hint more at it around this time while it's still fresh in people's minds. So I would expect a lot of teasers, a lot of links, a lot of, just little leaks and whatnot to come out around, let's say, January or February, early 2019, like the earliest in 2019 possible is when it would make the most sense for them to start hinting at Borderlands 3 again. Obviously, they've kind of been hinting at it the past few months, or at least probably I'd say a little over a year. But I think they'd really double down on it after Borderlands 2 VR is released and kind of had its run. So I know I said I was going to kind of step away from rumors in this video, but just really quickly, talking about the whole earnings report and how Borderlands 3 was kind of hinted at in those, and how it was pushed back a year from coming out sometime supposedly around this time to sometime next year. A lot of people, me included, believe that the reason was that it was too clustered of a release schedule. Like there were too many big games coming out in this time. Mainly Red Dead Redemption 2 was the real big one. And it's obvious to see because that was a huge game. That really is a huge game now. So it would have been tough for Borderlands 3 to find a footing. Not even that they are completely different games, don't get me wrong, but just the fact that that big of a game is coming out, anything being released remotely near it's just going to be overshadowed. And it did happen. I mean, Black Ops 4 launched a couple weeks before it, and yeah, that was a big game, but most people I know that are playing Black Ops 4 have switched to Red Dead Redemption 2 already. So, just the fact that that big of a game was coming out, Borderlands 3 kind of took a step back and waited. Now, there could be other reasons. This is just my theory about why it was pushed back, but it makes sense because, like I said, from a business perspective, it makes sense. You're going to lose sales if you're so close to another title, even if it's not even related. I feel like they are going to try to avoid the launch of Battleborn, which I do feel really bad for that launch because Battleborn's it's a good game, don't get me wrong. There's lots of good fun to have, but since it was released so close to Overwatch, and before either game was announced, Overwatch was basically declared the winner between the two, and since they're so similar of a game in a relatively new kind of subgenre of games, that it just couldn't find its footing. Honestly, if it was released some other time, even pushed back like a year or whatever, and polished to be a little bit better than Overwatch, it could have been a really huge game, but it was kind of a botched launch just because of when it released. So I feel like Gearbox is going to take a step back and try to avoid that and not be released anytime near anything even remotely similar. That being said, it actually does look pretty good because if you look to 2019, there aren't a whole lot of big games, at least that we know of right now. Obviously, more games will be announced and released as they do. But right now, there isn't a whole lot of huge games. Obviously, there are some, like Last of Us Part 2 is going to be a good, big one. Anthem's looking to be pretty big. I don't know, nothing really in huge competition with something like Borderlands. Maybe like Division 2 would be the most competition, but considering how Division 1 was received, who knows? It's really up in the air about what's actually going to be released and when. And the big problem right now is a lot of those games don't even have release dates yet that I know of. I don't think, like Last of Us Part 2, I'm really excited for, but last time I checked, I don't think that has a release date yet. Now, I could be wrong on that. I don't really follow that news quite as thoroughly as I follow like Borderlands news. But, yeah, so who knows when that's actually going to come out. But when it does, it's going to just destroy anything that comes remotely near it. So I guess that bodes well for Borderlands because without a whole lot getting in the way, it can potentially release anytime in 2019 that it wants, and it will be a huge game. There's not really a lot of competition for it, so that's just good, and it's what makes sense. So that's when it should be released, sometime next year. Now this one's a bit of a no-brainer, but for whatever reason lately it's been more and more uncommon, is that when the game releases, it should be done. Like, done. Especially how long they've been working on this. I mean, bugs are expected, don't get me wrong. I don't expect it to be fully 100%, like, no flaws. It's a perfect game in all regards. No, but there should be very few bugs with very few patches need to be made. Which I feel like that's what they're going for. That isn't probably another reason they kind of moved it back a little bit without anyone really knowing, is because they want it to be polished to the point where there are not going to be a lot of patches needed. And that's great. That's exactly what I want. I mean, take your time, I don't want to have to buy the game and then have to wait like 3 days for it to download patches for me to actually be able to play it, If it can release to the standard where it's going to be for the rest of its runtime, then that's great. I'm 100% okay with that. Take your time, fix the bugs, but the game should be done when it's announced and released. So what you want? If you have been waiting for this game as long as I have, then you have been waiting a very long time. I have been wanting this game for so long, and it's hard not to develop expectations. Obviously, we all have our expectations of what it's going to be like, and especially the longer that passes by, the better it seems like it's going to be, and eventually it's going to hit a breaking point where one of two things are going to happen. It's going to split the fans. Either people will just get bored and not care about it when it finally when it finally is released, or expectations will be so high they can never be met. Now, this really is kind of an issue with any game, especially a sequel, like Last of Us Part 2, for example. Last of Us Part 1 was such a huge game. It was great, don't get me wrong. That's why I'm excited for the sequel. but it feels like we've been waiting for it for a long time. I don't even remember when the first time they announced it was, like actually had an announcement, but it's been a couple of years. So when it finally does launch, you know, people's expectations are going to be astronomical, especially after the first one. So I feel like Gearbox is trying to avoid that by waiting to announce anything until they're ready, which makes sense because, you know, obviously keep at least the public's expectations lower. But people like us, you know, that watch these kind of videos, that do this kind of research, we have already known it's coming for a while. We have our expectations. We are anticipating so much for something that hasn't even been announced yet. And it's tough not to get excited, not to have these expectations. And especially how phenomenal a franchise Borderlands is, it's going to be tough. They got to do something about it soon because so many people have such high expectations already. It's going to be tough no matter what actually gets announced and when it'll be released. But God, I'm excited. It's got to be soon. It only makes sense, you know. With all the rumors, all the just kind of general knowledge, with all just the logic being thrown at it, we got to hear something from it soon. I would expect, if I actually am making kind of like a prediction, I would say within the first few months of 2019. I wouldn't expect anything before 2019, but definitely by, let's say, February. By the end of February, we should at least hear something official, even just a teaser. Not necessarily an announcement, but like just some more of a teaser towards Borderlands 3. That about does it. As always, be sure to leave a comment. Please, please, please leave a comment. Tell me how I can improve myself. I am always looking for improvement. I don't just say that. I really do mean it. And your comment really does help out a ton. Also, be sure to check out my other channel, YC Games, if you want. I mean, that's just, you know, some fun gameplay over there. Lots of fun. Also, please leave a comment. Tell me how you guys want the Borderlands 2 VR walkthrough, to play through, whatever you want to call it, to go. Do you want to see main missions? Do you want some side missions thrown in there? Let me know. If there's any missions in particular you want to see, let me know. I'll be sure to include them because I'm really looking forward to it. I really want to treat Borderlands 2 VR kind of like a test in a way, because I do want to do the same thing when Borderlands 3 finally launches. And Borderlands 2 VR is just kind of a test to see what you guys actually want to see. Obviously, I'm not just going to include everything. I'll cut out whatever parts you don't want to see because those do get pretty boring. So yeah, just let me know. Yeah, that about does it. I guess if there's any other, like if you guys don't feel comfortable making comments in the video, if there's any social media network you prefer to use, kind of, I guess, leave a comment to tell me that. I'll be sure to make a a profile for the channel, and we can communicate that way if you want. And yeah, see y'all on the next one. Keep your stick on the ice. We're all in this together.